action. Come for the thrills, telling truths and hope you won't find any black pills. Right beneath the surface, pull back the propaganda veil. Find true freedom and justice. It's red, right, and real. And red, right, and real.
There you go, and then push release with your inside leg.
Hey there.
Howdy.
Well, I am fresh out of my nap, my coma-induced nap from riding. If anybody's been watching my videos on Facebook, I'm riding really, really hard, and it's like I've become this athlete, and I haven't built up the strength yet, so it's a lot of fun. So I'm sitting here with my barn hairdo too. I didn't even get to make it to hair and makeup, but I am Bella, formerly of the Bella D'Angelo Show, now Red, Right, and Real, and AK.
My name's AK Kamara, and I'm a lot of things, but in this capacity, I am the co-host of Bella D'Angelo. Make sure that you guys hit the like button, hit the share button. If you're not already subscribed on our YouTube page, make sure to go and do that. We're also streaming on Rumble, and also we're streaming on Facebook. So if you're not following us on Facebook, it really doesn't matter where you watch us from at this point. We're just trying to throw it out there as many platforms as possible, but make sure that you hit the like button and the share button, because if people can't see us and hear us, then we're never going to grow. So Bella, let me ask you, just in regards to the horse riding, like I imagine, because I've rode a few horses in my life. It's been a long time. Out when I was in North Dakota, I had a family friend, the Essensons, and they had a bunch of horses, but I only rode a handful of times. But I do remember that the inner part of my thighs were very, very like tired. So like, how do you do anything to build up that stamina, or do you just ride to build up the stamina?
You know, when by the way, tonight we have a lot to cover. We're going to be talking about Ukraine, Zelensky, probably a little bit about Doge, and then we might dip into some topics about Tampon Tim here in Minnesota. But we do start out with a little bit of going back and forth and maybe a little bit of entertainment. You know, the interesting thing, AK, it's kind of like, you know, when you start going to the gym and you start lifting weights. I remember this back in the day when I first got back into going to the gym. You know, you'd take either a class or you'd go through your set of weights, and you would get tired and you would feel the strain. And when you look at, if you go to my Facebook page, which is Bella D'Angelo, D'Angelo, there's a video from a year ago. And literally a year ago, all I was doing was walking and trotting. My horse never even got sweaty, and I never even got tired. And literally within the last 4 months, we have gone from walk, trot to adding canter to leg yield, shoulder in, beginning of haunches in, simple changes, and extended trot. That's an awful lot. And by the time I'm done riding, she's head to toe sweat. And it's a wonderful workout. And I am launching healinghottie.com, which is going to start this week. And it's a blog, and it's also me sharing the experience of equine therapy. It's used for PTSD in veterans. It's used there's equine therapy facilities here around Minneapolis, which there will be links to be able to find those facilities and to learn through my journey, because equine therapy is real. And so, yeah, your inner thighs can feel it, so can your whole entire body, but it's wonderful. So where do you want to start? You want to start with Zelensky?
Yeah. So, you know, one of the things that has kind of taken over, well, let's kind of lead up to it.
Yes.
So for those that were paying attention, there started to be more than just a murmur, but there started to be outright questions to our newly confirmed Attorney General, Pam Bondi, about where are the Epstein files. It became more than just something that people were kind of asking. You started to see U.S. senators started to ask, like, where are the Epstein files? Because the promise was, as soon as I become Attorney General, we're going to release whatever we can. And then she went on a few different Fox News shows and said, they've been on my desk. I've been reviewing them. And so there was this entire event that was planned that they were going to release the Epstein files. And then it turned into like kind of this debacle. And so that happened, and we can talk about that next. But when that happened, people were just like, oh my goodness, what's happening? And then the next day, this meeting happened between President Trump and the Ukrainian president, Zelensky, and also Vice President J.D. Vance was there. And this was already kind of set up beforehand. Basically, long story short, there was a mineral deal that Ukraine was going to agree to with the United States, and it would kind of go like this. The Ukraine has all of these minerals, right? Rare earth minerals that the United States can use to create technology. And the idea was that we would actually get some of those mineral rights because of how much money we've given to Ukraine. And in exchange for that, we would then also protect those sites with certain government assets, right? So the United States would have some type of agreement that we would defend basically our property because Ukraine's giving it to us. Well, in that kind of initial exchange, Zelensky was sitting there and he wasn't being very gracious. And Vice President J.D. Vance called him out to it and said, like, you haven't even said thank you. You know, we're sitting down, we're trying to have this conversation. And basically Zelensky goes on like this 10-minute tirade. And throughout that entire tirade where he's saying, you know, this is what we're doing. And, you know, you guys haven't been really doing everything that you said that you would do. And we need more of your help. President Trump interjected and said, hey, now you're being disrespectful because you're arguing with us when we're only trying to help you. And basically by the end of this conversation, they were supposed to have a second like press conference where they were going to take questions from the press, which happens a lot when you have foreign leaders visit. President Trump canceled it and told Zelensky, please leave. And so that took over the entire news cycle. It continues to dominate the news cycle. And the thing that I am most curious about is like your perspective, Bella, because again, when sometimes myself, especially, I'm so in like the everyday news cycle because this is something that I enjoy and the content that I make. Sometimes it's hard to get the perspective of people that aren't always in the news cycle, people that love to go and ride their horse for equine therapy. So I'm curious from your perspective and also those that you've spoken with when you go and grab your Diet Coke from McDonald's, what do people think about this meeting that happened between Zelensky and Trump, in which Trump basically said, skedaddle, you're not ready to negotiate peace, you're not listening, and you're being very disrespectful?
So just so you know, I think to be proud, I'm adding decaf iced tea, all
Nice.
natural iced tea.
Oh,
Anyways,
look at you.
well, I wanted to do a man on the street segment because I do talk to so many people on such a regular basis. I really didn't get a chance to ask man on the street much, and I really haven't listened to that much news cycle as I normally do. But so this is kind of like the anniversary of the Ukraine war going on for 3 years. We've sent billions and billions of money over there. I truly believe that this would not have happened if Biden hadn't been in office and said the things that he did that did open the door to Putin walking in. When you watch the clip, AK, it's obvious that Zelensky, and I'm not trying to repeat words that are already said. So, okay, I won't then. I mean, the word was, it doesn't read the room. Well, what the hell was he doing walking in there to sit and argue instead of, he knew and understood what he was walking in there for, but instead of agreeing and signing the deal, which is what was understood prior to the meeting, he goes in and asks for additional security and other things that could have been, that needed to be discussed afterwards, not in front of the cameras at the White House. And he comes across, he comes across as not only not a leader, but a petulant child trying to argue and trying to continue to somehow ask for the assistance of the United States, and then runs off over to France and other countries. And it sounds to me like he thinks he's going to put a separate deal together and kind of thumb it in Trump's face.
Yeah, and so I kind of think there's a few things that are interesting about this. So from your perspective, you know, you get the gist of it for sure. But I'm curious, like, do you think, to you, does this really matter? Like, and then secondly, and what I mean by what does it matter, the fact that this deal fell apart, like, does that matter to you? And then secondly, do you think that Trump and JD Vance acted in a bad way, or do you think that this was like purely on Zelensky? You kind of said that you view that on Zelensky, but I'm just curious, like, do you care?
What do you mean? What do you mean? Do I care? Do I care if the Ukraine, if Trump? This is multiple different pieces. So do I care if Trump and Vance get this deal done, or do I care if the war in Ukraine gets ended?
Both.
That leads me to believe that you don't care, or you don't think that we should be involved in this. Let's hear your perspective first, and then I will play back to your perspective.
So here's the deal. I care that human life ends every single day. I think it's tragic. I don't want any suffering to happen anywhere in the entire globe. I also don't believe that the United States, it's their role to make sure that that doesn't happen. And I think that what we do when it comes to our foreign affairs and our military strategies, we need to protect our assets, and we need to protect our allies, like our legitimate allies, when it makes sense and when it's necessary. People forget that Ukraine is not even like officially, technically, they're not our ally. Like, we have some agreements with them. We signed a declaration with them back in 1994 that, by the way, that treaty was never ratified by Congress in regards to nuclear disarmament, because after the USSR fell, they had some nuclear weapons there, and we felt like that wasn't really too safe. So we negotiated an agreement that we would provide them with access to basically military hardware, and like give them that guarantee. We didn't say, hey, we're going to protect you no matter what happens. That would be silly. We didn't do that. So back to my point, though, I think that ultimately we've had a policy shift, not just a little bit, a giant policy shift from Biden's administration to President Trump's administration. President Trump is willing to help other nations as long as it's good for us, the United States, hence America first, right? So when that question that I asked you is, do you care? Like, I know that, like, esoterically, or like, you know, in general, you care when people die, but like me, myself, I don't care that Zelensky's mad. I don't care that NATO or other nations think that the United States shouldn't have acted this way. Like, none of that matters, because I believe the United States, we are exceptional. I believe that when it comes to all world affairs, we are the greatest nation in the entire world, and people need to act like it. If you come to us, the United States of America, the greatest nation that has ever existed, you better come so with your head bowed slightly, and you better speak in a lowered, hushed tone. And if you don't, you can kick rocks, because ultimately it's not our problem. I love this narrative that's like, if we don't deal with it, right? If we don't help Ukraine defeat Russia, which is insane in and of itself, then Russia is going to move to other NATO countries. A, that doesn't actually make any sense. But B, if we just said that did happen, well, then it seems to me like European nations have a far greater interest in stopping this. So maybe they should kick in a little bit more. And what's funny about this entire situation, that's what it seems like is happening. And some people are like, so you want America to step aside and let Europe take over? It's like, no, I want Europe to worry about Europe. I want the United States to worry about North America, right? It's in our hemisphere. I want the United States, even more specifically, to worry about the United States. And we can provide support and things like that to other nations where it makes sense. But yes, I'm glad to see what happened happen. And what's even funnier about it is that this entire like disagreement was because Zelensky was like demanding that the United States provide basically boots on the ground to protect these mineral rights in these mineral places, which would put the United States, it would drag us directly into conflict with Russia. And Trump basically is like, what are you talking about, man? Like, that's not what the deal was. And then again, ultimately, President Trump is willing to make a reasonable, request and, answer, I should say, a reasonable response to the request and say, well, this would be in our interest to get these mineral rights. But like, we're not going to be tricked into being drugged into an armed conflict with Russia. And that's really what the premise of this is. So then the last part is, do I think most people care? I think the media has been trying to make us care for a long time. And I think that most Americans, just quite frankly, don't care. Now, if you're Ukrainian of ancestry or you have family members in Ukraine, of course you're going to care. If you really buy into this idea that Putin is just going to basically turn into like Adolf Jr. and he's going to start invading all surrounding nations, sure. But that's not what it seems like it's going to be. It like legitimately doesn't. And I think it's more about keeping power and stabilizing European Union when it comes to gas and other energy resources, because Russia basically can control all of Europe with their gas pipelines and with their gas access. And the European Union, along with NATO, doesn't want that because that leaves them at a disadvantage. And because the United States is attached to NATO, I mean, we're basically NATO, we're the main funders of it, then the kind of prevailing conventional wisdom has been, we need to protect that. But Donald Trump is looking at it from a different way. And I respect what he's doing. He's saying to Russia, like, hey, at the end of the day, if you guys can do something that makes sense to us, like strategically, economically, then let's play ball. And I think that's actually how you achieve peace, far greater than saying, well, we're just going to constantly try and defeat Russia. I think that will only drag us into World War III. And so it's interesting to see that perspective. But again, my whole point is, I don't think the average American really cares that Zelensky and the European Union and whatever is mad at President Trump. And I actually respect the way that President Trump and Vice President J.D. Vance treated Zelensky, because they put him in his place. I know that was a rant, but
no, I'm going to be honest. I wish right now that I have a lot of history to share a little bit about Ukraine, and Ukraine has been at war for years and years and years. I think that if Zelensky could have negotiated this, he would have done this a long time ago. Putin is far stronger leader than Zelensky is. Zelensky, I really think that this was just a way, like you said, trying to get boots on the ground and continue aid going over to Ukraine. Now, Trump is handling it from a negotiating standpoint, like you said. If you want to come to the table and sit down and negotiate, let's get it done. He's handling it in a different way. And I believe that because he campaigned on it, and I fully believe that if Biden had never gotten in office, it wouldn't have opened the door for Putin to do this. So part of Trump, if anybody can negotiate this, it's going to be Trump. And if it happens outside of Trump, great. I think that, I believe he's still going to get it done. And if it happens outside of those, of his negotiating, great as well. It's interesting because I posted something on Facebook that literally Facebook lit up with all these people and talking about, I support Ukraine and the yellow and blue flag. And my comment on Facebook today was that, educate yourself about what you're supporting and what you're standing for, instead of being, dragged into what the media, like you led into, is that the media is wanting us to care about this. but the dangerous part is, and I've seen this happen, is that people get behind things that they don't necessarily know what they're supporting, and then they divide themselves amongst their friends and family over things that they shouldn't even be getting upset. And this is something that will be interesting to watch and see how it plays out. Does he get the support from France and those other countries, or does he come back with a suit on and respectfully sit down with Trump and negotiate and sign the deal? So any closing thoughts on that, or you want to drill more into it?
Yeah, so closing thought on this, and then again we can kind of talk about the Epstein files, because I'm curious about your position on this. So my closing thought is, at the end of the day, the United States is the world's strongest country. We have been. There's no question about it. Now, for a long time, we've kind of taken this role where we try and be the world's police, and economically, has it benefited us in a certain sense? Sure. I also think that it's hurt us in other senses as well, because all these other nations are like, oh, we're all dependent on you. But then that empowers these deep state apparatus, right? These intelligence agencies and organizations, it gives them all of the power, because it's like, well, if the United States doesn't do what they're going to do, then this is going to be bad, and it's going to look like you're suffering a military failure. And it's like, no, it's not us. We're not failing. We're not even supposed to be involved in this. Technically, on paper, Russia invaded Ukraine, right? And then Ukraine has been fighting back against Russia, technically on paper. But we all know that the only reason that Ukraine is able to fight back is because the United States, along with NATO nations, have been supplying them with all this cash for their own infrastructure, military hardware, and also strategic planning of how to deploy their military assets. That's the only reason that Ukraine has even been able to fight back. So technically, right, on paper, it's Ukraine versus Russia. But in reality, it's a proxy war for NATO against Russia that has led to the death of hundreds of thousands of not just Ukrainians, but Russians, young fighting age males, like hundreds of thousands. I know President Trump during the campaign trail mentioned that he thinks those numbers are way bigger than it's being reported. And at the end of this entire process, it's in the best interest, as long as, and this is the key to the peace deal, will Russia actually stop, right? And that's going to be the question. And I think, based off of the negotiations, I don't think that that's a foolish question to ask. Guarantee you have to make assurances. You don't just trust Putin. Putin's a bad dude. Straight up, I think Putin is a tyrant. I think he's a dictator. I also think that Zelensky is a dictator as well. So understand that that's why as an American, I'm just tired of just funding these forever wars. Let's worry about our own thing. And if Europe's going to take care of Europe and it makes sense and we can maybe just provide some strategic insight, then great. But at the end of that, let's shoot for peace. And if we can't make that happen because you say we'll never surrender, then go ahead, never surrender, and see what happens to your nation. If you're not willing to talk about peace, I think the United States position is, if you're not going to talk about peace, we're not going to do anything else. So that's my closing thoughts on it. I'm curious, though, about, like I said, transitioning as we kind of laid this out. It was interesting how these Epstein files, or the news of the Epstein files, that ended up being kind of like a nothing burger, turned out. So let me ask you, just like period, point blank, Bella, do you care whether or not the Epstein files are released? I need to know. It's a burning question. I'm so curious.
You know what, and then I got to tell Jay Dugan. So Rocks and Cows, Jay Dugan. I was supposed to remind him that we're doing the show. I got to send a quick message.
Yeah. So I just.
By the way, the show is streaming on the show page.
I see it.
And on my page. So I gotta have some fun with this. We gotta entertain some people. Okay, so I haven't seen the list, so I'm gonna ask you. First of all, have you seen it? Who's on it? Can you give me 3 prominent names?
So that's a tricky question. I've seen lists for sure. None that were released because of Pam Bondi. because that's the rub, right? Is that basically the list that Pam Bondi gave to the folks that she gave the information to already have been out there forever. And it most specifically doesn't give us anything that we haven't already known through public information requests, but more specifically through Mike Cernovich. So way back in 2014, Mike Cernovich, or maybe it wasn't it was like 2019. What am I talking about? But Mike Cernovich basically, opened up this records request, and then he started this lawsuit, and then the Miami Herald, I think, or some paper in Florida, joined in that lawsuit / request, and that's basically all the things that led up to Epstein being arrested again, and then what ended up with him killing himself in a prison, right?
He was Hillary Clintonized.
Right. Could have been. I'm a skeptic, okay? I'm not saying that he didn't, but I also am not saying that he did. So I'm saying it seems very, very fishy. I do want to know, but to answer your question, who's on the list? Who are prominent people on the list? The same people that have been on the list, which again is circumstantial, because people aren't being arrested based off of the list. So let me kind of rephrase this question. When you say who's on the list, does it matter? Understand that nothing was actually released that was brand new. That's because that's not where this thing is at yet.
People like Bill Clinton and Gates and J-Lo and right, the same.
Sure.
Names.
Yeah.
The
same names that have been out there. Yes.
Okay. So first of all, I want to find some of the people that used to tell me about how all of these people. You heard some of this, AK, or maybe not. Only maybe I get the crazies that tell me that, all of these people have already been put in Gitmo or hanged or whatever. Tom Hanks is supposed to have been dead like 5 years already, and his impersonator is running around just like Joe Biden. I mean, I think all these people are freaking Q followers from another planet, and it's the same people tell me that there's tunnels under the sea, and the White House was empty when Biden was in there, and Biden was dead forever. And so this Epstein file thing, to me, first of all, I get tired of people posting it. When will the file come out? And my thing is, who cares? I mean, honest to God already, who flipping cares? Okay. Because the next piece is, even if it does come out that it is just it was a sex island. Now, the piece that I find interesting was that I got to listen to his attorney, the final attorney that he had when he was Clintonized in jail. And the attorney said, look, all of these people that were close to him and around him and spending time with him and dinner parties and on the island, all of a sudden want, break free from him. And when you dig into it, a lot of those names, there were claims like, well, if you settle with millions of dollars, my client will go away. So he was saying innocent until proven. Right? We need to look at this and we need to pull it apart, which I agree with that piece. Let me answer the first question. Do I really give to whoever went there and did whatever? What I do care about is if the story is true that these young underage women were recruited, abused, raped, whatever horrific, horrible things happened. The problem that I have is that all of these things, and like you said, it comes out as a nothing burger. I mean, I don't understand why it came out that way, and it didn't come out with this big revealing file that was why Pam would put herself in that situation. The problem that I have with all of these high profile cases is, who is going to prosecute and who is going to handle the process to hold these people not only accountable, but then also to persecute and to follow the justice system, because we have a huge problem with our justice system, but that's a whole nother segment to get into at another time. But I don't know. This Epstein thing to me has seemed like to me, it seemed very conspiratorial for the longest time. And so, again, did I really care? It's about if these actual young women have been treated the way that it's being put out there. What do you think?
Yeah. So I'm basically where you're at. The thing that I care the most about is the women. If this actually did happen to the women the way that they said that it did, right?
Yep.
And we can find who the people are. These animals need to be locked up and removed from society. That's what I care about. I want justice. So do I care if I get to see the file? No, I don't. Do I believe the only way to get justice is to make the list public? No, I actually don't. I've been having this back and forth with people on X, and I'm like, listen, I'm not a lawyer. I'm not. But we do have something called the Fifth Amendment and the Sixth Amendment. And my understanding is that if you have not yet indicted or got a arrest warrant issued for someone, if you go as the Department of Justice, the same body that's going to now be prosecuting, and before you search, before you secure, I should say, those arrest warrants, or you at least, like go and indict them, and maybe it's under a sealed indictment until you release it. If you haven't done that first step of securing either an indictment or an arrest before you make the list public, then those people will be able to make a motion to dismiss their case. Now it's very nuanced, and people are like, what are you talking about? Like, they publish lists all the time. Yes, usually after they have secured an arrest warrant or they have secured an indictment. Because you are actually poisoning the jury pool, because you said earlier, you're innocent until proven guilty in this country. And I know that sometimes sucks when we have people that it's like, no, this person 100% is guilty. I feel it with every fiber of my being. Look at all this evidence, yada, yada, yada. But that doesn't actually matter, because we believe in a jury trial in this nation, or I guess you can go before a judge. There are cases like that for criminal cases. But you are innocent until proven guilty beyond a reasonable doubt. So I just say people get so hyped up because it does wrap into a little bit of conspiracy, which I do think happens. Do I think that they have, and by they, I'm talking about like the government, has been obscuring and trying to slow roll the Epstein files in general and indictments and everything like that? Yeah, I actually do. Why do I think they're doing it? Because I think that there's some powerful politicians and other elites that have been involved, that they're just trying to slow roll it. They threw out Ghislaine Maxwell as like the bait, and then she got convicted, and Epstein is no longer alive. So maybe they're like, hey, people will be good enough with this. And it's like, no, because if the allegations are true, these animals need to be removed. So the way that I kind of fall down on it, and then we can kind of move on and get your final thoughts on it. I think that people, in the same way that people only care about Ukraine because of media, on the right, people only care about the Epstein files because we've pushed it so hard for so long that it's going to be like some transformative event, that this is going to finally reveal all of the evil, secret, global cabal elites that are pedophiles that have rings in Hollywood and da-da-da-da-da. I don't actually think
We already know. I mean, that's why I keep saying, who gives two flying hula hoops? I mean, we know the names, we and you can't tell me that you don't deep down know and understand that Epstein was Clintonized. I mean, for the love of God. I mean, the cameras were shut off. I mean, all of this, but AK leans a little bit more faith in the establishment. Me, zero faith in establishment. But as AK always looks to me, the more, I think you call it organically common sense, my working class view. I look at things from a common sense lens. And that's why I made that post today, is that I would like in general for people to take a step back and breathe. And instead of doing the knee-jerk reaction whenever something hits the media, people today are too quickly grabbing it, stamping it, and getting behind it, and then making ridiculous statements like, I can't even be in the same room with this person that believes this or breathe the same air. I mean, I don't know if they're reading from Oprah's playbook, and I doubt that she's actually moving to Italy, but you know, when these stars say, I can't be in the same country as Elon Musk and breathe the same air, and all these drama queens, at the end of the day, I don't think people know and understand just how detrimentally close to economic destruction, decline that this country got into. And I just want to, people need to understand that there's a lot of bigger things that are going on right now in this country. And I had a little bit of a conversation with somebody yesterday, and it was obvious that he was an anti-Trumper. And AK, we've all heard this. The statement got thrown back into my face. If he was going to do this, he said he was going to do it on day one. Well, you can't get anything done in day one. I think that one of the most critical pieces that is being worked on, which is the DOJ and investigating. We talked at length on our last show about going into all of these accounts that were set up for foreign projects, foreign aid, foreign, you know, we were behind a fairy symphony in Ireland. I mean, you know, literally the flying fairies, AK. Come on.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The actual like buzzing fairies, yes.
Buzzing fairies in Ireland, and we paid for this madness. And at the end of the day, I have said this. I believe that the government is being restructured under Donald Trump and his crew that has been brought in. And I got asked yesterday, what's the difference? We have people from the business world that are coming in that are not part of the establishment and have intentions of completely turning things around. Because I had this other conversation, AK, I'd like your point on this. So this guy that I was talking to said that even if the U.S. collapsed, which we've all heard that this collapse has been coming for many, many, many years. And Elon Musk specifically told in an interview that, yes, if we didn't start to turn things around within all of this money laundering with foreign aid and all of the overreach and misuse and fat bloviated government, just like, why is he asking government employees to respond to an email saying what they did? Five simple questions. What did they do in line of work? I loved Elon's response the other day when he said it was a password reset test.
Yeah.
Here's the interesting thing. We were more than, because I got this thrown at me too. He can't do this. He can't just let go of all these government employees. They're protected. Well, you know what? Everybody was more than willing to shit can anybody that didn't get the COVID jab. But now all of a sudden we ask them for some accountability, and it's, oh no, we can't do that. Oh my God, they're protected class. People, do your research. Know and understand what we have now. We've got an administration in charge that is cleaning up the government, and God willing, we may have lower taxes and actually a thriving economy that is America first and drilling our way out of this inflation recession. I got off, of course, we didn't exactly close out the Epstein thing, but at the end of the day, I think the Epstein thing, much like how it has resurfaced off and on, it may just end up going nowhere. And I don't know what else to say.
Yeah, so I personally think it is going somewhere. I think that because there was such a desire for something to be done, I think that Pam Bondi just made a little bit of a calculation error on when she says something. All of Mega is like waiting for it, right? So when she said, "Oh, I'm going to release this," we're all hyped up. Everyone's jazzed, like, yeah. And then when it turns out to be a nothing burger, there was some sabotage behind it. And so, what was the sabotage? Well, you have this Southern District of New York FBI office that she got word of after she said that she was going to release the files on like phase one. Later that night, allegedly, based off of a letter, so it's no longer alleged because a letter officially got published by Pam Bondi to Kash Patel, but someone reached out to her from this office in Southern New York, FBI office, and said, hey, we got your request, but like they're withholding like 2,000 documents from you. And so then Pam Bondi, again, this is the night before she's going to release, and after she'd already went on Jesse Waters and said that she was going to release it. So she's like, oh man, like this isn't everything. So we got to go through this first. So then she sends a letter to Kash Patel. Long story short, because she had already hyped up that expectation, she had to deliver something. And that something that she delivered ended up being basically a nothing burger, but for good reason. So I think, and this is why this is even pertinent of me rehashing this point, is I think that it will go forward. I think that Kash Patel and Pam Bondi are dedicated to actually shutting down these networks. Like truly, honestly, I don't think it's just going to be business as usual when they are able to, because we have to understand that we live within a legal constrained world. We don't live in a vigilante justice world. The United States doesn't, at least. And so even if we believe that these are terrible things that are happening, we still have to be able to legally dot our I's and cross our T's. So I do believe that you will see arrests be made. I do. I honestly do. And do I think that they're going to release the Epstein files? They probably will release a version after the indictments and arrests happen. But yeah, I actually am very hopeful and optimistic that that's actually going to happen, because I do believe that Pam Bondi and Kash Patel are going to deliver. It's just, I think, back to your other point about the day one garbage question that people ask, like, oh, Trump said on day one. We all know that Trump wanted to do it on day one, but sometimes you hit reality. So you say, hey, I'm going to do this stuff on day one. The reality is you couldn't do it on day one because people stood in your way. So you did everything that you could, and you're going to continue to try and deliver on those things. And that's what President Trump is going to do. So yeah, maybe it's going to be on day 500. Maybe it's on day 112. It's going to happen because President Trump isn't going to give up. So that's the way I look at it. And kind of the very final thing to wrap up, and then I want to move into another topic. But to your question, right? Ultimately, when people try and make these aha got yous, like, oh, I thought Trump was going to do this. I thought that Trump was going to do this. You're not acting in good faith with me. So I'm not going to play your stupid game. Now, if someone came to me and they said, hey, man, like I legitimately, when Trump said day one, I really believed it. Can you explain why this didn't happen? You're in good faith. So I'm going to actually have a conversation. If you're just trying to be like basically dunk on me and dunk on Trump and be like, oh, I thought he was going to do this, I don't even want to play with you. Or if I do play with you, I'm just going to be a troll right back at you. And, we could just troll flame each other all day. But that's how I handle when people ask me the whole day one, or I thought he was going to bring down the price of this. Look at this. It's like, you're not even negotiating or conversating in good faith. You're just doing it because you're trying to dunk.
Yeah, I ended it. First of all, it was interesting because the door got open by saying how unhinged the left was starting to act. And so I thought this person who I thought maybe he had kind of come to his senses, and the minute that he went down the day one, and then the minute that he said that 50% of the country did not vote for Trump, and if 50% of the country wasn't behind what Trump was doing, that Trump wasn't going to get anything accomplished. And immediately it was very obvious, not only was he anti-Trump, but he really had no desire to hear anything that I had to say about the whole thing. So I just said, you know what? I'm done. New topic. Because those are the people you're not going to get anywhere with. So anyways, what's your next topic?
Yeah. So did you hear that audio that Tampon Timmy gave to the Nurses Association? It was like a private luncheon, and one of the attendants recorded the conversation of his speech. Did you hear it all, the audio? If my computer was working better, I'd play it for you, but I'm just curious if you heard it.
No.
Okay. And I wish I could play it. next episode, hopefully I'll have my computer stuff fixed and then I can actually show.
What did our fearless leader, Mr. Tampon, say?
It's hilarious. So basically, he goes down this diatribe explaining how it's up to you, the nurses, the front line, the union, the working class, to fight and push back against Donald Trump and Elon Musk, right? Like, that's the premise. And then he's like, and I've, the talking heads and the pundits, it's like they think that, they'll ask questions like, what are you guys doing in the Democrat Party? And all of you Democrats, I'm just here to tell you, there's no one going to save us. It's up to us to save ourselves. And so, of course, we're going to be doing what we do because you have fascists and Nazis trying to steal this country. And then everyone starts clapping, right? That's what he said. He literally said that there's fascists and Nazis trying to steal this country. Or maybe he said, no, yeah, that's because fascists and Nazis stole this country or something. But he literally said that. So when that audio got leaked, it's like, oh, man, Walz just stepped in it because he's saying that not only is Trump and Elon fascists and Nazis, but all the Republicans and voters that support them, apparently that we stole the country and we're trying to take over. So what does that imply? That we cheated, right? So when asked about it, and this is the greatest exchange that I've seen, and shout out to Tom Hauser at KSTP. A lot of people will dunk on him and say he's terrible and blah, blah, blah. I actually like Tom Hauser. I think he's been fair every time he's done an interview with me. But he pushed back against Walz, and Walz's response was, oh, did you not know in Ohio during a city council something that there was this push by this group that showed up on a bridge and they were Nazis, they were flying swastikas, and they're trying to take over that town. And it's like, oh, okay, I like how you're trying to find that's what Walz said. Now that's a true story, but he said steal the country. We all know that he was talking about Trump. So then what specifically Hauser did is he pushed back and he was like, well, you said steal the country. You're talking about a story and about a small town in Ohio. And Walz's eyes were just like this. They were wide. His face, you could tell he was mad, and his eyes were darting back and forth. And Walz actually had to defend himself, and he just sounded like a buffoon. And then he came out saying, yeah, I'm going to trip over myself and say some stupid things from time to time. So it's just like, dude, he got caught because someone recorded. So shout out to that person that made that secret recording, because otherwise this would have never got out, right? And then shout out.
Like how he misspoke and misrepresented his service in military, where he was over in China, just about every. So I think this is so. I got to interject this because this is hilarious. So Jay Dugan, who oversees the Rocks and Cows Facebook page. So Jay is an avid fan of the show, and AK, he called me last week, and he's like, "What's the dirt? What dirt does AK have from being in the White House?" And I said, well, to me, I think he met with a lot of musicians and cool people like that. He had a lot of cool stories like that. And Jay goes, Bella, he goes, you mean you didn't yell at AK and say, excuse me, you're in the White House. You mean you can't get to Trump and say you need to investigate the living hell out of this criminal trying to be governor, destroying the, Minnesota. And it is true, AK. Can't you help us out? Because we got to get rid of Walz. And last time we talked, he was going to run for Tina Smith's position, and now he's throwing his hand out saying he wants to run for another term as governor.
Yeah, so let's go back to the point that Jay Dugan. Very good point, sir. I unfortunately did not get to personally talk with President Trump. If I would have, that 100% is what I would say. But rest assured, I have been talking to other people, actually, technically, literally, in the White House, political director, specifically the Midwest Regional Political Director, and advising him that we would like some support with these things. Now, in Minnesota, if you've seen over the last couple of weeks, there have been a handful of not only congressional delegation letters that have gone out. So, basically the 4 Republicans sign off saying, please, Pam Bondi, take a look at these things, right? So writing letters to different department heads. And then on top of that, you also had the Minnesota House Republican Caucus, the Minnesota Senate Victory for the Republicans, sending letters as well. You've had the Republican Party of Minnesota sending letters. Now, I know some people are going to roll their eyes like, oh, a strongly worded letter. The letter is to specifically ask for help and support from the federal government to come into Minnesota, which is what we need. Now,
Minnesota to do what?
So, like, if you're Department of Justice, you come into Minnesota and you start putting pressure on all of these different entities saying, we're going to open up investigations. You're going to have to show us your books because we think you're violating federal law. That's the type of pressure that we need. So and that's
what needs to happen here in Minnesota.
That's what needs to happen. And then you have the threat if you don't comply with this federal law, which, listen, those of us that are states' rights people, I believe in nullification. I do, but not for things like immigration, not for things like using taxpayer dollars to pay for criminal aliens, not for things like allowing biological males to compete against biological females in direct defiance of Title IX as based off of the executive order, which the executive branch has the right to determine what Title IX means. But beyond all of that, that's what you have to do. You have to dot your I's and cross your T's. So let's talk just real quickly about where these actions have actually led to, and we'll see what happens. But again, this is just so Jay Dugan can understand, and folks that are in, that they want the action, because I'm right there too. I don't want to just talk about things. I want to see action. So one specific thing that happened from these letters is Pam Bondi responded and said, hey, Minnesota, you are currently saying you're not going to actually listen to the Title IX ruling that came out in regards to the federal government, saying that you are going to allow biological males to continue to compete against biological females. We are going to come in and we are going to start investigating for violating Title IX, right? So that's what Pam Bondi said. It's like, get prepared. And because you had the Minnesota State High School Association come out and say that they're not going to observe this executive order, they're going to continue to allow biological males to compete against biological females in high school. And so go ahead.
Quick question. So I might read this or not. I got a message on Facebook that is about this topic. So
sure.
I wasn't exactly clear. Is that executive order, was that allowing states to have their own independent decision outside of the executive order? Because that's what, okay, so this is what this gentleman was saying, was that Trump handed it over to states to handle, and that basically Minnesota can do what they're doing and defy that because it was handed over to states' rights, which I did not believe that's what happened.
Nope. So basically, the states can, again, we do have states' rights, 10th Amendment, okay? And Minnesota right now is exercising nullification. However, understand that you can't violate federal civil rights. You can't, okay? Like, you can say you're going to, like, for instance, if Minnesota said, yeah, we're going to resegregate, like, we're just going to have black only, white only schools, the federal government would come and say that's a violation of the U.S. Constitution, and they would use force, okay? So, yes, you can nullify because states do have certain rights. In regards to Title IX, though, this is specifically an executive branch, if you want to say, ruling that the executive branch can change all of these different titles. And so Title IX specifically is talking about basically like separate but equal for female athletes, right? So like if you're going to have a male program, you have to allow a female program to exist, right? It's enforcing that and saying by allowing biological males to compete against biological females in a space that's supposed to be like women's basketball or women's hockey, you're in violation of Title IX, right? You are discriminating and providing no longer a space for females to compete because you're allowing males. So I say all of that then the next hook, the first big hook, is they say, if you're not going to adhere, we're going to pull federal funding. And then you take it a step further after that and say, are we going to have to actually start coming in and charging people and arresting people for violating federal law? So to the point, yes, states' rights still exist, but Trump didn't say, I'm sending this back to the
I
states.
didn't think so. Let me ask you. So how the conversation started is, what about transgender? Because it starts out with, there was a Preserve Girls Sports rally, okay? And I said, what's the need for this? Trump ended men and women's sports. And he says, Wallace and Democrat representatives won't comply. Trump put it in the hands of the states.
Yeah, no, Trump didn't put it in the hands of the states.
Right. I didn't think so. Now, let me finish this. So he says, well, they lose federal funding, period, right? So then he says, yeah, but they still won't comply, and the non-public schools are going to get even less, plus Wallace is pushing for $4+ million in extra state income tax, must be to compensate the federal money loss. And so then he went on to say, apparently enough, and with all the green light for the sanctuary state to be a total LGBTQ+ state and groom children in our schools to allow the teachers to push the ideology on the innocent children to see this and sway them to begin hormone therapeutics to get a sex change operation sooner than later, and the kidnap law to take parental rights, the children will for sure fall for it. Special treatment for the special kids that comply to the brainwashing, a reward system to the young children to make the change, special groups of transgenders visiting during lunch breaks and after school. I can see it. Learn how to dress like a girl and put on makeup and be part of the freak shows at libraries and all age drag queen shows. If good teachers don't comply, they lose their jobs and more freaks will take their place.
Yeah, so awesome, great comment, salient points. But the issue is, the reason why this rally is happening tomorrow, which I'm going to be there with Riley Gaines and other folks from the America First Policy Institute that are coming here, Jack Brewer, former Minnesota Viking, is because, yes, it is true that you have this nullification, and there's going to be ways where they carve it out, and they can actually still allow it, but they would have to just change what they call it. So basically, there's a law that's being introduced by Republicans, and Riley Gaines is coming for that. Do I actually think it's going to pass? I literally don't. No. Why don't I believe it's going to pass? I think it will pass the House because there's enough Republicans, and I think every Republican is going to vote in favor of this bill, but it's never going to pass the Senate, and it's definitely not going to be signed by Governor Walz because he doesn't care about this issue from our perspective. He cares about gender critical ideology. That's what he cares about. So all to say, you still try, right? Having the bill, getting the fanfare, getting the press, it's all meant to hopefully, because there's a possibility that maybe one or two DFL state senators decide to flip, and then it's a lot more pressure against Walz, right? I just don't think Walz, he would never, ever sign a bill that would ban biological males from competing against biological females if the biological male says, I'm a girl. He will never sign that bill. It's because his entire career, he's been like this hardcore pro-trans children thing. Like, that's his thing. Like, he believes that children are trans and that they should be able to be supported even medically through mutilation to affirm their identity. That is a cornerstone of Tim Walz's philosophy. He ain't ever going to go against it. I'm sorry. Like, there's a million other issues, but I still think it's good to have the rally. I think it's good to have the support. I think it's good to create basically a grassroots flow. And that might be one of the reasons that when Tim Walz decides to run for another term for governor, that he loses this time. Maybe it's this issue. It could be, but I'm just telling you, he ain't going to sign the bill that separates it back and has biological boys play with boys and biological girls play with girls. and you can't cross over and, basically steal all of the glory from biological females as a boy. And that's just what it is. But
I
good
have no
point. Good
idea.
issue.
I have no idea how this transgenderism even got as far as it did. I think that when Bruce Jenner, Bruce Jenner is running around with fake boobs and a wiener. I'm sorry, but he is. I mean, he's still a man. And, as much as makeup and hair and everything, the thing is, it does not change biologically who this person is. And the dangerous part about a lot of this is young children that do not have the clarity. They're children. They are children, okay? And children all get fantasies of things that they want to be. I mean, I fantasized about being an Indy 500 Pinky Tuscadero. AK doesn't know who the hell I'm talking about.
Oh,
People my era know who the hell Pinky Tuscadero was. I mean, I fantasize of being an Indy 500 driver, of driving demolition derby vehicles, a lot of things. I dreamt of being a Stevie Nicks one day. I mean, there are many things. I never in my ever loving mind that said to myself, I want to go in and have my body mutilated and have drugs ingested in my system so that I can be Prince or Donny Osmond or whoever the hell, because at the end of the day, all you have to do is do the research and listen to people that have gone through this and the severe depression, the suicide. I say this, in a lot of ways, it's been made a fad. Like kids now are allowed to pretend that they're a kitty and have a litter box in school. The hardship is when they wake up and they're in their late 20s or 30s and realize they can't have children. They can't properly have relationships, healthy relationships. Again, you have to look out for our children. And this is absolutely criminal, what is happening by trying to support this. And I think that in the end, I really hope, I had thought that because Tampon Timmy was exposed nationally when he was picked by Kamala, that it would help Minnesota by people waking up and understanding who he really is. AK, you think that we don't have very long memories, and it'll be interesting to see if he will run for another term as governor. But God help us, God willing, Minnesota has learned through this last presidential campaign what and who Tampon is.
yeah. So I personally think that we talked about this. So let's just real quickly. So I thought that Tim Walz, there was a high probability that he was going to appoint him. So Tina Smith was first going to step down before the end of her term, and then he was going to put himself in as senator, and then that way Peggy Flanagan could be governor, or he was going to have Tina step down, and then he was going to appoint Peggy Flanagan to be senator, and then she would be the incumbent, and that he would then just run for another term as governor. I still think that could happen. I mean, we have until 2026. If there's enough political pressure, I could see not him putting himself as a senator, because I think he wants to be governor again. I think it's either he runs for governor or he's done. That's what I think it is. I don't think he actually wants to go back to DC. He could have stayed a congressman. He could have, if he really loved that life, and waited for an opportunity to pop up. And he could have been like a whatever, multi-term congressman. And some people say, no, that was never going to happen. Look what happened in CD8, and look what happened down in CD1 and Finstead. But listen, man, I mean, Walz was liked when he was down there. It's just that he saw this opportunity. Long story short, I still think that Tim Walz is vulnerable for governor, and I think he only wants governor. If he can't get it, he might not run again, but I think he will. I think he's going to run because he's built everything up to continuing to be in this position. I think he has more things that he wants to do, because I think he wants to run for president again, like for president, not for vice president. So think about it. If he gets elected to another term in 26, then leading up to 28, he's going to be able to be in the mix. If he doesn't run for another term, he's going to be like the former governor from Minnesota who also lost with Kamala Harris. So you kind of need that other win under your belt. So that's what I think the real calculation is. So yes, as crazy as it sounds, if Tim Walz wins another term, he's going to run for president, 100% guarantee. If he doesn't, he might try and run, but I don't think he'll go anywhere in the primary. So that's what we're looking at. But I do think, lastly, and then hand it off to you to get us closed because we're already at an hour and some.
I know, and I was going to say we were only going to do 30 minutes.
I know. But here's my last point is I do think that Tim Walz is vulnerable. I think that he was exposed. He continues to expose himself. I think that Minnesotans aren't having it. And you're starting to now see, especially with all this fraud stuff that's been happening, because thank God Republicans still right now, next Tuesday, there's going to be a special election in that seat for Paul Wickstrom. So get out there, and there's been amazing support out there. And I think that Paul Wickstrom has a real chance at winning in 40B. But if we can hold on, this is going to continue where you're going to have these committees where all this fraud conversation gets brought up, and it exposes Tim Walz and it exposes his administration. But I ultimately think that even if that doesn't happen and we still remain, a Democrat wins and it's back to a tie, all of this exposure about all this fraud is hurting Tim Walz. And you're seeing the media in the Twin Cities, the legacy media, start to kind of turn on him. So that's amazing to see. And I think that that's what we're looking at. I think that Republicans are going to have a real opportunity to actually take the governorship, especially if Tim Walz runs. If it's an open seat, then yeah, Republicans have an amazing opportunity. But I think that Tim Walz is vulnerable. So that's it. We're going to be able to talk more and more about Tim Walz in the future episodes, but I'm going to kick it over to you, Bella. Before I go, I just want to say, make sure to follow me on X, Instagram, Facebook, and TikTok. I'm either real AK Kamara or AK Kamara. Tonight, if you are really, bored at 9 p.m. and you want to see me on Fox 9, turn on Fox 9 at 9 p.m. I'm doing a segment about an interesting event that happened yesterday at a Devani's in Edina. And
you gotta set it up.
No, that's the teaser. You have to watch it. So, or if you go and follow me on X, you'll see my most recent tweet, or I should say post, and you'll be able to fill yourself in. However, with that, make sure that you like the show, share it. I'm AK Kamara. Thank you so much. Bella, take us home.
That's why he gets paid the big bucks. He never drags me to the White House. I don't even get to go on Fox 9 with him. He doesn't even tell me what the hell he did at Devani's yesterday. For all I know, he's some big hero and we don't know about it. So I'm always in the dark. I'm just the little person over here with the pretty face, and that's all. Yeah.
We got to keep it suspenseful,
I know.
And by the way, I invited you, and you could have been at Devani's yesterday. But in fairness, you did have equine time with Hottie lined up, and we talked about it. But yeah, you would have been there if you would have came to that thing yesterday that I invited you to.
I know, and I have a personal goal to get better in shape so that I don't get. But in all defense, if you watch my videos, I mean, she's doing a tremendous job. My instructor is amazing, and I'm excited to launch the healinghottie.com. Everybody, just. My message on Facebook comes from I have personal stories of what it is to divide because of what you support and what you stand for. And that's not what this is all about. And this show right here, Red, Right, and Real, we open to everybody. The reason that I got started was I wanted everybody to be able to have the right to express their opinion. And now more than ever, don't be so quick to just stand on a hill that you don't really know what you're supporting and then turn around and decide to divide yourself from others that have their viewpoint when you maybe don't necessarily know what it is that you're supporting. But tonight was a great show. It's a lot of fun. We continue building our listenership, and we got to get out, and we got to, I always say educate, get people involved, get people listening, learning, engaged, and informed. And now more than ever, because turn off mainstream media and understand that the boss is back in the White House, and this is a great time to be alive, to watch this country finally get turned around. And with that, I'm going to say good night. God bless America, and ciao for now. Ooh.
Are you fired up? Then take action. Copy the link to this episode and text it to one friend who needs to hear it. Support us where you found us by liking and subscribing for future content. This is a grassroots production supported by listeners like you.